Thank you so much. Madam Speaker, Madam Vice President, our First Lady and Second Gentleman, members of Congress and the Cabinet, Justices of the Supreme Court, my fellow Americans. Last year, COVID-19 kept us apart. This year, we're finally together again. Tonight, we meet as Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, but most importantly, as Americans, with the duty to one another, to America, to the American people, to the Constitution, and an unwavering resolve that freedom will always triumph over tyranny. Thank you. 6 days ago, Russia's Vladimir Putin sought to shake the very foundations of the free world, thinking he could make it bend to his menacing ways. But he badly miscalculated. He thought he could roll into Ukraine and the world would roll over. Instead, he met with a wall of strength he never anticipated or imagined. He met the Ukrainian people. And President Zelensky, to every Ukrainian, their fearlessness, their courage, their determination literally inspires the world. Groups of citizens blocking tanks with their bodies, everyone from students to retirees to teachers, turned soldiers defending their homeland. And in this struggle, President Zelensky said in his speech to the European Parliament, "Light will win over darkness." The Ukrainian ambassador to the United States is here tonight, sitting with the First Lady. Let each of us, if you're able to stand and send an unmistakable signal to the world of Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. She's bright, she's strong, she's resolved. Yes, we, the United States of America, stand with the Ukrainian people. Throughout our history, we've learned this lesson. When dictators do not pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos. They keep moving, and the cost, the threats to America and America to the world keeps rising. That's why the NATO alliance was created, to secure peace and stability in Europe after World War II. The United States is a member, along with 29 other nations. It matters. American diplomacy matters. American resolve matters. Putin's latest attack on Ukraine was premeditated and totally unprovoked. He rejected repeated efforts at diplomacy. He thought the West and NATO wouldn't respond. He thought he could divide us at home, in this chamber, in this nation. He thought he could divide us in Europe as well. But Putin was wrong. We are ready. We are united, and that's what we did. We stayed united. We prepared extensively and carefully. We spent months building coalitions of other freedom-loving nations in Europe and the Americas, from America to the Asian and African continents, to confront Putin. Like many of you, I spent countless hours unifying our European allies. We shared with the world in advance what we knew Putin was planning and precisely how we would try to falsify and justify his aggression. We countered Russia's lies with the truth. And now that he's acted, the free world is holding him accountable. along with 27 members of the European Union, including France, Germany, Italy, as well as countries like the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and many others, even Switzerland, are inflicting pain on Russia and supporting the people of Ukraine. Putin is now isolated from the world more than he has ever been. Together,
welcome to the Gilchrist experience. As you see, those of you that didn't watch, goes on, 20 minutes on the Ukraine. I was looking to say something about voting rights. I mean, that's my main concern. But, well, we have to get rid of this man that's threatening us with missiles, nuclear missiles. I think he's gone mad. A lot of people are questioning his sanity. Well, who would think about, you said, if the West interrupts, they'll never see such a rampage. You know, he put his nuclear people on alert.
Mm-hmm. The ultimate threat.
Scares me to death.
Yeah.
So, but that didn't frighten the Ukrainians, who are his brothers and sisters. Now, this is a family affair. This man wants to go back to the days of Stalin. A little side note on Stalin starved 3 to 4 million people in 1931. Took their seeds away. They were all farmers. They couldn't raise their crops. So the Ukrainians have old wounds. But I understand today there are a lot of family, they have families in each country. They're brothers and sisters.
Fighting. Yes.
I understand the Russians, a couple of Russians quit on them. They had no gasoline.
Yeah, yesterday they surrendered. They didn't have fuel for their tanks and vehicles. Their morale was low, and they said they quit. They told the Ukrainian people, you know, we give up. So they left their vehicles, and they're Russians. Many of the Ukrainians are Russians. So they just walked away from the entire scenario. And if they don't have the proper equipment and ammunition and other things to sustain themselves, what are they going to do?
I am thinking of, to paraphrase young Cassius Clay, you know, why should I be fighting against my brothers and sisters for political reasons, and when in turn they are in fact my family? Why should I be fighting against them? Right. And that was his statement of policy against going to Vietnam. But you have, at this point, some of the people in Ukraine and some from Russia who are saying the same thing. Why should I be fighting against my brothers and sisters? Because the boss man over here wants to make more money, or wants to get more oil, wants to make his friends rich. And that ultimately bodes well for the kinship of us all. And if the people in the United States, the politicians in the United States, were to highlight that there is that kinship between people on both sides of the border, that may be one of the most effective ways that we can reach out to put an end to the war.
And we don't need Russian gasoline. We don't. They're playing games. The usual American greed is in play now.
Republicans?
Republicans and Democrats. They're talking about the gasoline. This incident has nothing to do with our gasoline. We get 7% of petroleum that's imported in this country comes from Russia. 7%.
That's a lot.
No, it's not.
It means we can do without it.
It's not. We don't need it. We don't need Russia for that 7%. Most of the petroleum this country buys is from Canada, all right? And from Central American and South American countries. We don't need Russia's petroleum. The only thing coming out of that region, which is why he went in and took Crimea, is for the ports, for the fuel coming out of the ports. And they make mazout, they have mazout and other petrochemicals, which is used for jet fuel. And this is why the U.S. has never really gone up against Russia, because they make jet fuel. They make Jet A-1 and JP-54.
I thought they was Ukrainians that made jet fuel.
The fuel The Russians want to control that.
Ah, I see.
It's about the resources.
Okay.
So the U.S. is not really trying to go up toe-to-toe with Russia on anything. They jacked up the gasoline 60 cents last week. I filled my car up yesterday. It cost me $61 to fill my car.
As opposed to how much a month ago?
40-something dollars. All right? So
$1 a gallon.
capitalism is playing a game.
Yeah.
They're exploiting the scenario over there and talking about gasoline. Gasoline here has nothing to do with what's going on in Ukraine. Nothing whatsoever. We're importing gasoline from Guyana in South America. There is more petroleum in Guyana than ever existed in Saudi Arabia. Exxon is there, BP is there, all the major corporations are there. They have over 30 wells that they've dug in the last 3 years, and each well, offshore well they have dug, has enough oil to last for 50 to 100 years.
And neighboring Venezuela, of
And
course,
Venezuela also
that's
is
the center
another
of the
scenario.
Venezuelan economy, the oil that had been selling to
Right.
the United States.
So Exxon is down there. They're drilling, bringing fuel in from Guyana. Their people are being flown from Houston to Guyana. They have chartered flights back and forth. Back and forth. See, you remember when Exxon lost the deal with Russia? Remember when Trump had that guy from Exxon? He was the secretary, Secretary of State from Exxon. Exxon got kicked out of a deal in Russia to set up the refineries in Russia, and China got the deal. China said, why you give it to the Americans? We can work together. So they don't use the U.S. dollar at all.
You mean in the North Arctic? All that, there's
No.
$1 trillion worth of...
There was a deal with Russia to develop their refineries.
Right. And
Exxon was over there working on the contract,
Right.
and Chairman Xi stepped in and said to Putin, why are you dealing with the Americans when we can deal together? You don't
So
need
they
the
took that
American
deal?
dollars.
the
So-
Chinese took that deal.
Yeah, they took the deal, and Exxon got booted out, and the former CEO of Exxon became the Secretary of State under Trump.
Yeah.
And that's how that went down. And they don't use the U.S. dollar for international trade there. See, the U.S. dollar is what's called the reserve currency for all international
So
business.
that happened before Trump became president?
No. Yes. Just before Trump became president, Exxon lost that deal. They
so
lost
that's
that
why
deal
they put the CEO, ex-CEO
of Exxon as the Secretary of State.
Oh.
But all of this talk about gasoline price is nonsense. Ukraine doesn't really have anything to do with the price of gas. They're jacking it up because there's a situation and they can blame it on the situation. You see. And then again, what about the Africans in the Ukraine?
Well, yeah. I thought they were being held back because they wanted them to go to war.
No, they don't
Because all
want.
the 18 to 60-year-old men were being told they couldn't
You can't leave the country.
Right. But they were not allowing the black people on the
leave.
train. And I saw video of that. And blacks were ordered to get off the train.
And it wasn't because they were young,
No. Women
just
too.
because they were black.
Get off the train.
the women.
So now, and there was a report today that some of them were in the cold for 3 and 4 days waiting to get on the train, and the guy just about froze to death. He couldn't even get up. They had to lift him. He had been sitting in one spot for 3 days in the cold. So in their suffering, they are inflicting suffering on other people because of the color of their skin.
Well, we always get the tail end of the deal.
The racism, in their suffering, they are still racist in their behavioral pattern. And the African guy said to them, then they had a nice interview with this guy yesterday. He said, I'm not your problem. I'm not Russian. I'm not your problem. Why are you attacking me? And the prime minister finally said that will cease, because they had 2 separate lines. And the line with the black people on it was not moving at all.
It's the race of the lifeboats.
Right.
You know,
Right.
who goes down with the ship You know,
if there's
I'm faster
anything
than you,
left, you can have some. Like when my father was in the Second World War, he said, a black GI got blood when and if every white GI got blood before him. Red Cross didn't give you blood if you were black, unless all the white GIs got blood.
That should be happening in 2022.
But that's the reality of the world that we live in. And the focus, if Putin can get his people, his hardcore supporters, to focus on just their own survival, it will become clear that he doesn't have the good of all Russia in his heart. He has the good of his people, his billionaire cadre. That is who he's serving. And that may become clearer as more and more of the poor Russians, as more and more of the poor Ukrainians realize this man is in it for his own gain. And that may be part of how the U.S. media can most effectively serve the public, by making it clear that there are people who've become billionaires working under Putin, and these are the people that he serves, and they're the ones who serve him, not the general public. The people on the farms who are poor in Russia, they were there poor before Putin, and they'll be there poor after Putin. He really hasn't done that much to elevate their status.
Right.
I don't see why Putin is doing all this. What's his end game?
He is
I mean,
angry because of the fall of the
I know the reasons
USSR.
he's giving, but it isn't going too well, is it?
No.
He says he wants to rebuild glorious Russia, the USSR of the
That's crazy.
60s and 70s and 80s.
So what about his sanity? Everybody's questioning his
Yeah.
sanity.
Well, we had somebody you could question his sanity, too. I mean,
Trump? Well, Trump and him are friends.
yeah. You know, but
He owes
the-
Trump, Trump owes him, I don't know how much money.
yeah, the fact is you have these demagogues. They come periodically. They
Did you hear
show
what
up.
Trump's saying about Putin?
Said he was a genius, right? These demagogues arrive. They're around for a bit,
you've got
and they
Republicans
disappear. They
agreeing
fall
with him.
off, they get killed off, or they're gone. All right?
Well, Republicans...
What do we do with Trump? You always said forget about Trump. How can we forget about him?
The
Here's
racists and the
his
greedy
boss
people
right
who
here,
support him.
going crazy in the Ukraine, fighting his
Trump
brother.
is not my concern.
Well, it should be.
He's not
He's
my
gonna cause a
concern.
lot of problems.
My concern is
You
the
realize-
administration we have here, that they do what
Are
they
you
need to
listening to
do
what
over
Republicans
this
are
period.
saying?
This administration needs to do what it needs to do to the nth degree while they're there, and establish a pattern of excellence so people can use their common sense and say, all right, well, he did this, he did this, he did this, he performed this way, and go to
There you go, looking for common sense from Republicans.
Oh, and now you're making a point that I said. You're making a point that I made way back. The American public is stupid. The American
You're
public.
calling all of us. I mean,
No, not all of us.
well,
But
look
people
at
have a habit
74
of
million
forgetting.
people voted for Trump. Can we call them all stupid?
I don't even want to talk about
Deluded. Would that be more...
But this is the main. This should be our main concern. The
He has
effects
conned enough of them.
This nut in America. What he's talking about. He's raving about Putin.
This guy's nowhere near where Putin has ever been. He's nowhere near a Putin.
But Putin got him into office.
For Putin's purpose, he's the dummy. All right?
Yeah, okay.
Putin's not the dummy. He's the dummy.
Well,
He's the
you still
useful
got this
idiot.
dummy, this puppet. Hillary called him a puppet. for
Putin has problems now. He can't be concerned about Donald Trump. He needs to be concerned about himself. His own people are in the streets in Moscow
You should
in
hear what the
revolt against what's
You should hear
going
what the
on.
Republicans say about Biden. Due to this attack here, they're saying that Biden weakness.
Oh, so they want to go to war. Of course they want to go to war. Of
War
course.
is not unprofitable.
No, they won't go that far.
That's a
but,
manipulation.
But
What are we doing
this
for
is
voting
crazy.
rights? How are we going to guarantee that
that's something
people
that we should
who were
do.
standing in long lines, how are we going to guarantee that people have the right to vote in Florida, Georgia, Texas, and other places where they're closing down the polls and they
that's
wouldn't
what
be able to vote?
We have to stick together as a team.
Well, we also have to elevate that discussion from the small local clubs, the small local churches. We have to elevate that discussion to a national level, Because whereas in New York you may have significant numbers of black and brown voters who are registered and are the majority in a lot of the congressional districts, we cannot be smug and say, well, we ain't got a problem, because we then have to be concerned about what happens in Georgia, what happens in Texas,
Right.
because what happens in Georgia and in Texas is definitely going to affect the elections that's coming up in November. It's definitely affecting exactly who goes into the Electoral College and to whom
There
do
you
they owe their allegiances. So part of our task is getting it clear to the audience, and not just the New York audience who may ordinarily watch this show, but to people outside of New York who will watch this or who may watch this show on the internet, that what is happening is going to be coming after them as well. Their right to vote, their equity at the polls is something that's being threatened, and those who back up Donald Trump have been very, very strategic and intelligent in making sure that those things are happening behind the curtain. We have to pull back the curtain and make it clear. It's not a New York battle. It's not even a battle ultimately that's happening in Ukraine. We have to get people thinking this is a battle for the future of our country. This is a battle that these people are opposed to what we see as a necessary progress for our people. We have to make that clear.
When you pass a law that says if I don't like the results of the election between the two of you, and I like Owen, and I say, well, I don't like the fact that more people voted for Winston. I like Owen. Owen, you won. That's what they're doing.
That is
What the devil is the United
legally
States Attorney General and Department of Justice doing to protect the votes of the people?
Yeah.
I want to know, because I haven't heard anything.
And that discussion has to be
All right?
brought
And
forward
if they're
louder
going to
and
wait,
clear.
they're going to wait till November. It's done. It's a wrap. They had the primaries in Texas yesterday.
So what do we do about it now?
We take programs like this to
Got
a
to
big
hold this
audience.
administration to the fire. They need to get up and deal with these laws that have been passed. You can't wait until November and say, oh, well, 14 million people were denied the right to vote. That's too late.
How are we doing it?
I said I haven't heard anything from the Attorney General. I haven't heard anything. All right? The president jumped up
gotta
on
be doing
abortion
something.
before he jumped up on
For
voting rights.
one, we got to stop.
This is something that has to be
We gotta-
discussed every single day.
What about
over and
January
against Ukraine?
6th? That's one problem that we have to solve.
Those litigations, those criminal proceedings they have on those people, they're proceeding. The voting rights, the violation of constitutional rights. All right? We don't need a John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We don't need an
Yes, we
Eric.
do.
Negative. Read
We
the
do.
Constitution. The right to vote was given in 1877. Why the devil are we continually talking about voting rights?
Because they've
They have
stripped-
got black people going in circles over the same nonsensical
They've
stuff.
stripped
Eric
the-
Garner bill. There is no Eric Garner bill. You know why? Because 20 years before he was murdered, the law said you can't choke somebody. It was in the law. So when they stand up and tell you, oh, we're going to pass legislation, everybody think, oh, it's really wonderful. They're stupid. The law was on the books 25 years before the man was murdered.
Well, obviously, something's wrong.
That's what I'm talking about.
What's wrong?
We have to be careful of distractions.
The
And
law is not being followed.
Precisely. And our people
All
don't
right, now
study.
why is the
They're
law
not
not being
studying
followed?
law. You got these hucksters out here
Don't
that
you know
want to
the
make money
Voting
off of
Rights-
these tragedies
the
where
Voting
people being
Rights
murdered and talk
Act-
about we got a settlement, and they're selling out the people. They should have educated them. We don't need a law. The law is here. This is Penal Code Statute XYZ ABC. I wrote a paper on it. There were 6 charges that should have been preferred against those officers. And they weren't, because you got DAs that are complicit with the murders and the crimes that are being perpetrated against
You
our
just
people.
answered your own question. You just answered your own question.
And if you don't vote, if you don't get involved,
Now, that's the
you
problem.
become the victim.
There's a solution.
And we have to get
That's
discussions.
what the solution is, that make sure we concentrate on people voting. This can change everything.
And
If we
make it
can't-
clear that
If they
consequences
pass
of
a
not
law that
voting.
says you can't vote next time around,
No,
but he
no.
can vote, because that's what happened with the voting law.
But
People are
that-
going to be denied the right to vote. That's
but
exactly what I'm
that's
talking about.
gerrymandering and
That's
all
right. That's
sorts
what
of
that is.
stuff that's been going on for years. Now, when Trump was in control, he stripped us of all our rights by putting 3 people on the Supreme Court. That's what turned everything around.
The Supreme Court is crooked, too.
Well, now,
So-
what do we do about that?
Why are you looking for heaven down here?
Because I see salvation wherever I look. Because that's the only way out of this. Because we've been through tougher times than this. This is just a test of your faith.
When you fail to protect what you had, you lose it.
No, we can get it back. We have to get that spiritual energy amongst us.
No, it's not about spiritual energy. You got to get up and do your job.
That's it.
You got to get
And
up
some
and do your
people have
job.
to be
And the
lifted
Black
up
Caucus
to
failed
see
to do
hope.
their job when Obama told them years ago, y'all better get up on the voting rights issue. Oh, Maxine Ward, he can't talk to us like that. Oh, really? And now where are we? Because they were sleeping at the wheel.
And what about the people who hated Hillary so much we got Trump?
Hillary did herself in.
Well, see, there you
She
go.
did herself in.
Well,
And Hillary got caught for the same thing that Trump said she was doing. All right? She got caught
what did
cheating.
Trump do?
She got
Wasn't
caught.
Trump
She got
under
caught
investigation?
cheating. She and her friends
so
got caught
happy
cheating prior to the debate, feeding the answers to it. She got caught.
See,
All
you're
right?
one of the people that are happy
She got
that
caught.
Trump got in.
I'm not happy Trump got in because I understand
Why are you so happy
both.
about it?
I understand whether it's in a woman or a
Well,
man.
everybody
And being a
else
woman
doesn't.
doesn't qualify you for a president any more than it qualified him as a man being president. I'm about having
Right.
the best qualified person, not because somebody thinks they're entitled, all right? When her own husband said, oh, Obama, a few years ago, he would have been serving us coffee on an open mic. They're not about black people. Get that out of your head. She's a product of Senator Byrd,
Well,
the
what
Ku
were our
Klux Klan,
choices?
and all those people
What
out
were
of West
our
Virginia.
choices?
Read, study the history.
Our choices were
They gave you no
Trump,
choices.
Trump or Hillary. That's what
Why
our choices
settle
were.
for the raccoons in the commercial that are selling garbage out the back of a truck? See, we need to recognize
Getting beyond-
garbage when we see
How
it.
do you
getting
even
beyond
joke
the
about
lesser of two
things like
evils.
Thank you.
Part
I
of
don't know
what we
how
have
you
to
can
do.
joke about things like
What
that.
we have to do is
People have to see the mistakes that were made so we can correct
People don't
them.
study
Our
history,
charge is
Winston.
to educate
the mistake
voting
you're
public.
making is that Hillary was the only choice that we had that was good for us.
I'm not making a mistake about
Yes,
Hillary.
you
I
did.
know who Hillary is, and I
You
know
and
who
a lot
Trump
of other
is.
black people didn't vote for
Right?
Hillary because
I didn't say I didn't vote for her. I said she wasn't qualified.
beyond the spilled milk.
Well,
So
Trump was
don't
qualified.
ever tell me who I voted for.
Trump.
Don't you ever tell me who I voted for. You don't know who I vote for. And I
No.
didn't vote for Donald Trump. So take that out of your mouth.
Part of what
I
we have
didn't
to
say
deal
you
with.
voted for him.
You said I
you
didn't
were
vote for
happy.
Hillary. So who did I vote for? I vote.
Did you vote? Independent.
Well,
I am an independent. Thank God I am.
You
Yes.
voted
part of
independent.
what we have to deal with is making sure that we have an educated community so that that educated community in turn can select the best leaders who have our interests at heart. That's a critical part of what we do, and which is why important programs like this become important. The education that we would provide, the education that we challenge our viewers to put upon themselves and their children is what will take us beyond just voting for the lesser of two evils. The education that we would have to have our children create, maintain, and pass on is a big part of preparing for what happens beyond the Ukraine, what happens beyond the current oligarchy in Russia, so that we have our task. Rather than dealing with their faults, which is plenty of that, we need to deal with building up our own community and the strengths within our community. A critical part of which I see is the education of the young. We have people who are coming into their 20s and 30s. They know nothing about the Cold War. We have young people in our community, some of whom are making $50,000 a year, and they think they're in heaven. They don't understand that the people who are deciding on their salaries are making $50 million a year and don't look anything like them. This is part of what we have to be aware of and make our children aware
of.
of.
The rally last Saturday, where the main focus was Trayvon Martin's anniversary, but the mayor was there and the Speaker of the House of the City Council was there, and both of them named Adams.
Right.
Which is amazing. But Sharpton brought out in that rally the fact that we have so many black people in power, seats of power.
In the state and
What
city
are we
level.
going to do with all this newfound recognition, I'd say?
The first thing is to recognize the enemy and the ploys of the enemy. The ploys of the enemy is divide and conquer. That has worked successfully for hundreds of years. So when somebody comes to me and starts talking to me, that Witherspoon, that brother spent so much time talking about his suit, and I say, wait a minute now, I don't think Witherspoon is going to be a leader because of his suit. But they was, and it was two-breasted, and it was this, and it was pinstripe, and the lapels. No, I don't want to get into that nonsense discussion. Let's talk about the leadership that he provides and that he passes on. Because there are plenty of people who want to get us distracted with nonsense. And those are the ones that as they get access to print and broadcast media, they are the ones who would interfere with the exercise of power by our city council, by our state legislature, by leaders in education, leaders in science. We have to make sure that we build those people up, because there are enough people who are trying to distract us with nonsense. And recognizing that is the first step to say, wait a minute, brother, we have some things to talk about, because there are people who are spending millions of dollars so that we will talk about nonsense. And meanwhile, behind the curtain, they're putting billions of dollars in their pockets. And this is part of what we have to make sure our children are aware of this, because our children can sometimes be duped. The difference between Nike and Adidas, that can become a big discussion, and people threaten each other and nonsense. And wait a minute now, let's talk about the manufacture of our clothing. Let's talk about the exploitation of rubber plantations. Let's talk about, that's a discussion that never happens with our children, while they're fighting and shooting each other over the difference between Adidas and Nike. But our children don't know that they're being exploited, that they're being distracted. Our challenge is to wake them up, to shake them, and let them see, wait a minute now. The person who puts a bullet in Trayvon Martin didn't care about whether or not he was wearing Nikes or Adidas. But that's what our children are fighting over, or are distracted by. So we have to bring them back to a reality check and let them see. If they can understand that on a local level, they can then understand that globally the same game is being played, in other parts of the world. The same distraction game is being played.
There was a brother.
Do we have Leroy anywhere in the can we get Leroy on Skype?
Yes.
Will we ever able to do that?
Yes.
He's there.
Are you here?
He's there.
I'm there in spirit and uptown in flesh.
In the afternoon, Brother Leroy.
How you doing?
Let's get
God
you
bless
on.
you. God bless you, brothers. You have the typical conversation that attracts additional viewers, because when black men are talking sense, we're just dialing by the cable station has to turn back to say, what are these black men talking about? I would add to the point about bringing our children, what the brother just said, bringing our children into a reality. And what I add to it is the phrasing is not in place of, but adding to. Our creativity fuels their machine.
That's right.
Whatever category of business you want to look at, or academics, politics, we fuel their machine. And a case in point is the rappers. The rappers fuel the machine. The machine is run by people who don't even know how to recite a poem. And the creativity is so outstanding among our rappers. I'm just using them as an example. Has created a whole new industry, not only in America, but around the world. And we have to be shown how to tap that for our resource, which we had been doing up until the record companies came up with a plan for buying us off and controlling our creativity. So now you hear a lot of cursing, disrespect of the black woman, disrespect of oneself, killing of ourselves.
Making money.
So that's what I would add. And also, your earlier conversation, and if I may, we're local people, as the brother was pointing out. All we know is the local thing. This international thing we haven't been paying attention to. But there are sources of information who can give us an additional insight. And one of them is global, for the audience, globalresearch.ca and gunsandbutter.org and GaryNull.com. Those
You listen to
websites
Gary?
have
Gary, I haven't known in a long time,
outside
but I've been to his stuff. Yeah. Gary is a very good source of information. Yeah.
Man, I don't. People, like Brother Leroy is endorsing people outside of our group. I endorse actual facts, truth.
That's it.
That's what we want to base our game on.
That's it.
And one of the truths that's become evident, and Brother Baylor is right, that we have to understand you have, of the billionaires that we have who are people of color, the entertainment and sports is where they make their money.
Right.
You have geniuses in the field of science and education. They're not likely to be the ones who are put up on the front of the newspapers. They're not likely to be the ones who are cited as examples for our children as much as the millionaire or billionaire sports owners. So we have to be careful about who chooses our heroes, because that then decides what qualities we are encouraging in our children.
Right.
And we should be encouraging depth of thought. We should be encouraging the exchange of ideas. We should be encouraging pursuing the health of the community over the individual. That's what we should be encouraging, not necessarily a better quarterback for XYZ team or a new hip $1 million record.
Yeah.
You know, we have to put some of that aside, and we should go back to some of the core values that our community needs in order to uplift ourselves.
You know, you hit it. You're both hitting it on the head, because remember the days of Run DMC.
Well,
And they wore Adidas. All right? They put Adidas on the map.
millions of dollars they made for Adidas.
But before Run DMC, like when I was in school, I ran track. We didn't wear sneakers to school. We wore shoes to school.
Well,
And when I'm at track practice, I'm wearing either Puma or Adidas. The only guys that wore Puma and Adidas were the athletes, and we wore running track shoes with spikes, or we had our flats. Then when Run DMC and them came out, oh, boom, everybody jumped on Adidas. Then Nike came out. So I was talking with some students about sneakers. It only costs $15 to $17 to make a pair of sneakers. I don't care what brand it's on. $17, that's all it costs. And they got you paying $200, $600, killing each other over a $17 item. Nike had no factories in any white countries. Nike employed no white people in their factories. They had them in Indochina and Asia, and Central and South America, but they had no factories in a white European country. Why? Because of
Japanese.
No, because all their factories were like labor camps. The women's toilets had no doors on them. The ceilings were low. The fumes from the chemicals to make the adhesive to put the sole together were carcinogenic. Nobody working for Nike lived past age 27. Their attitude is, we got enough of these so-and-so and so-and-sos, we just get another one after that one falls off. And if they didn't die, they had either cancer or heart disease from the fumes. And I was talking to students about the fact of what Nike does to people that look like you and me.
and what happens with their dollars, the children's dollars that are going to
Their
Nike?
dollar is financing the death of people that look like them. And they couldn't grasp it. They couldn't see it. Well, I like them. They're good sneakers. They're totally oblivious. So we are financing the death of our own people in other locations. We have detached ourselves from the suffering of a black person here, an Asian person there, a Latino person there, or even a white person over there. That's what we have done. But I have never. My sons were growing up, they never put a pair of Nikes on their feet. Never. And I told them they never would. Not in my house. It'll never happen. Don't care what everybody thinks. I am not financing the people that are killing us. And that's why I don't support Hillary Clinton. Because she was down with the Klan and Byrd and all of that stuff in West Virginia. Those were her mentors. And she went into Haiti, and her husband they bankrupted Haiti for their rice production so the Haitians couldn't make $1 on the world market selling rice. I don't forget that stuff. I don't give a damn what you're running for. I'll be damned if I'm going to vote and back you. I won't vote for you. I won't do it. I'm not going to back anybody that's killing my people or anybody else.
And we got a white supremacist as a result of your hate.
I don't have hate. I have hate for evil.
Well,
all right? And I didn't get you a white supremacist. Your white friends got you a white supremacist.
My white friends.
All right?
My white friends.
So if you want to back somebody,
my white friends,
back somebody that you know is credible, has ethics and morals, and you back them. Not a problem. But I'm not backing anybody that's hurting black people. Nobody. I don't back him, and I don't back her.
Well, Trump is a classic example. of a white supremacist.
There's no difference between the lynch mob and the northern crackers that finagle behind you and steal your deed from your house that your grandmother had
no
and all this other
between
stuff.
Hillary and
the
Trump.
end results are the same.
Hillary and Trump.
The end results are the same.
No difference.
The end results are the same.
We can learn lessons by looking backwards.
Wow.
However,
I can
I
see
am
why we got
insistent that we
Trump.
need to be looking forward, and we need to be a little bit more alert to what's going to be happening November of this year. We need to be a little bit more alert about what's happening with the city council speaker, with the governor's race, with other things that are local. Because the discussion over what happened in the past with the last presidential election, or the one prior to Biden, the presidential election, that discussion is significant. But we cannot let it override the importance of us dealing with now and the future. Not many of our young people have spent any time or have gotten the education so that they can plan and prepare the future. Our educational institutions, and to a large extent, are not preparing children of our hue and heritage, are not preparing them to make intelligent decisions going forward. And this is part of what we have to be alert to, and it's something that years ago, you may remember me saying it right here on this program, the education of our young people, which so many people have given over to corporations and given over to people who are not of our interest, is something we've neglected. And my son, the challenge that he gave to me, which was so incredible, is that when we got to the point that he was coming home and asking me questions, like, Daddy, who was Frederick Douglass? And I'm thinking they're teaching him this in school. And he said, but Daddy, you never taught us this. That bell is still ringing in my head. But Daddy, you never taught us this. Have we taught our children the importance of understanding global affairs? Have we taught our children the importance of understanding who gets selected to represent them on different levels, not just the presidency? Have we taught our children the importance of understanding how our actions can damage our health and the health of our brothers and sisters in other parts of the world? These are things that the schools are not teaching our children. We have
Education starts in the home. My mother taught us to read before we went to kindergarten. It's supposed to start in the home. The mother who was there, well, in the old days, mothers were home. They're not home anymore. But whatever time you have with your child, you have to take the time to sit down, read to your child. Let your child see you reading a newspaper, reading a book, not looking at stupid basketball and all this other nonsensical stuff. You're raising a child. There is a commitment that you have to put into a child. When I worked for the Board of Ed, we had a girl, she was 13 years old, and she couldn't read. And I went to the house to speak to the mother. I said, you can't give us an empty barrel and think we can do something with it. You've had her all these years. The girl couldn't read.
Could the mother read?
The mother could read. I said, how do you have your daughter, and you think the teacher is supposed to look out for your child?
That's what we thought. That's what I thought.
That's that welfare mentality. Your child is your responsibility.
As I said, my children reminded me that these other institutions are not looking out for my children. I have to look out, and we have to look out for our children. We cannot depend upon other people, to grow and to educate and to do the things that would strengthen our community. That's incumbent upon us through programs like this, through other educational forums, through identifying the right leadership.
My solution is that we have to introduce love energy, instead of hate, or, find the God within. That's always my theme. The God in me loves the God in you.
And that depends on what God the person has.
Let me finish.
Let me finish. The devil?
I'm going to talk about the devil. We all got a devil in us, too.
Some people see him as their God.
I think Brother Leroy had a point to make.
Exactly. Like Trump. Exactly my point. And the devil in you comes out every now and then. We can see the demon in you.
Rumor is that we're human and we are flawed. That's the rumor I've heard.
We got God and the devil in us, and you should stress more.
And the right to be angry is definitely
every right in the world to be
credible.
angry. But that anger does nothing but feed the type of enzyme that kills your spirit.
If it pushes people to become more educated,
it raises my spirit.
If it pushes people to understand politics,
I want you to understand I'm very serious. Yes. Very serious. Especially when people make false statements about what I do and what I don't do.
20 years, and I can recognize when the devil comes out of you.
Right, and I can recognize when you're putting words in my mouth and you're not telling the truth.
I haven't put a word in your mouth.
You made a statement about who I voted for, and that's a lie. And I said it before, and I'll say it again.
Trump.
What we have to be alert to also.
I said you voted independent. That's what I said.
Part of our challenge is understanding that the bad forces out there are fomenting division.
And they're right inside
They
of the
are.
human that you're thinking about.
They are looking to get
They're
us
in
to
every
be against
human.
each other so that they can accomplish their goals. That's part of what we, and even the 2-year-old should understand that, that there are people out there who want you to do bad things so that they can benefit from it. And if we understand that and if we teach that to enough of our offspring, then we're moving towards a better world. And it's critical that we do that, whether it's in a religious setting, whether it's in a secular setting, in a political setting. It's critical that we do that and that we talk to our young people so they, by the time they reach 13 or 14, they understand there are people who will make billions of dollars off of their bad decisions, people who will make billions of dollars off of their misbehavior. And if a child does not understand that by the time they step into the teenage years, we may have lost credibility with that child because it's going to be, why didn't you tell me that, Daddy? Why didn't you tell me that, Mommy? And we then have to say,
It's all according to what times we're in. You go to the times of the 80s when Ronald Reagan became president, we had on the West Coast a planned genocide of crack. It was tossed into the gangs, the Bloods and the Crips, and they fought and killed a whole generation of black people with crack.
But there were people who recognized it and people who died because they recognized it. I'm talking about the Panthers and their fight against drugs. There were people who understood what was going on and they fought and died.
And the Panther leaders became crackheads, not cokeheads. I remember,
May I interject here that what we see as separate pieces, for example, the amount of us in jail.
Oh, yeah.
It's part of a system. The system is set up for us not to see ourselves in a bright light, in a larger than life light. It happens in entertainment and sports, but there is the setting up of a system. Now, what the brother is saying in terms of educating our children, I'll use the name of Dr. Edwin Nichols, who is a psychologist, industrial psychologist in Washington, D.C.
Genius.
He says we must politicize our children at an early age.
Amen.
Because the smartest of us, the smartest of our children, there are people in the education system who are on the lookout for very bright black boys and black girls. In some cases, they look to co-opt them and lead them in a direction where they can use them in their adulthood. In other areas, they sabotage them. When the child is an A student, they'll give them a C. The other flip side of that is where a child is not doing well and they're doing C work or D work, they'll give them an A. This is generation to generation. Now, when they get to college, they will find a way to say that we believe that you plagiarized this paper. And you talk to another people and they'll say, yeah, that happened to me. They're always on the left. It's a system. We cannot turn our children over to some people who have proven that they have not done right by us. And it's a sacrifice that we have to make in our churches, in our mosques, in our synagogues, in the black community. We must go in as volunteers or within our own family. And I maintain this, and I say this in conclusion, we should start having, beyond Easter, beyond Christmas, beyond Thanksgiving, we should pick out every month or every 2 months a family dinner where you can do it by virtual or you can do it in person, and you talk about family history where the children can gain a knowledge of who grandma is, where she came from, the trials and tribulations in the family, and build on that history and go on from there.
Using the family as an educational setup is critical, and us being in control of it. And again, I have to commend, because Brother Leroy is on point in so many ways, but if your child is knowing certain celebrities and knowing the rhymes and the rhythms of certain hip-hop people, but they don't know who Shalonda Young is. There's some missing on something. If they are interested in, let's say, sports and career, they should know who somebody. They should know about the people who are doing things that are helpful to us. Marisol Castro, right here in New York. You have people who are knowledgeable and who can be a role model for our children, as opposed to working for someone else. They are working for the benefit of our community. And that's part of what is critical. We have to make education into a full-time job and into something that we do at home at least as much as it goes on in the school. We cannot just say, well, that's the job of the Board of Ed. No, and we made that mistake. Millions of our children have suffered because we said, well, the Board of Ed, it's their job to educate our children. No, it's our job.
Well, I like to recommend, coming to National Action Network every Saturday. We have a youth huddle on Mondays, which is very, informational.
Yes.
To the youth and to the seniors.
Yeah, we can learn a few things also.
All the organizations out there. Saturday is church for me, with Reverend Sharpton, my pastor, because I get an upliftment on every sermon.
We educate our people. We educate our children.
You used to see the way people talk about Reverend Sharpton for years, and I've been there 24 years. And I've heard all sorts of stuff about Reverend Sharpton. From people who turn around and come ask from, he tells stories about people, about the woman that hated his guts. And
years later,
her son got killed, and she was the
first person she called.
First person she came running to.
Recognizing and affirming
a lot of people have certain images, and a lot of times they're completely bogus. So you have to reach down and find the spirit.
We have coming up this year some black inventors. I had the opportunity of being on a call with some of the board members of these corporations. There was a automobile manufacturer in the 1920s. I can't remember his name, but he had a company that rivaled Ford. Now, when the country went into the Great Depression, his business collapsed. But there was a black auto manufacturer in the United States. People don't know his names.
On this program, we spoke about that years ago.
All right? Now, they went out of business in 1929. This is 2022.
What was the name of the company?
I can't remember. It's C, first initial C. I can't remember. Anybody can go on and Google the only black manufacturer, automobile manufacturer.
What?
So he went out of business following the Depression.
Yeah.
There was a black manufacturer coming. And I'm going to tell you something.
And he went out in 29?
1929, the company collapsed with the Depression.
A lot of other companies.
There's a black manufacturer here in the United States.
Now,
I can't speak other than the fact that you will hear about it. And his vehicle.
Electric?
Yeah, it's going to put Elon Musk in the Stone Age.
Elon Musk?
The Tesla. The Tesla.
Tesla.
All right?
So it's electric.
I have seen the mock-up on it. I've seen a lot of work, and I was amazed by what this brother has done.
Well, bring out his name.
I can't. I have some constraints on me. I can't get into it. When the time is right that they can release it, it'll come out. You'll know about it. There is also a company in avionics, in aircraft. They're going to flip the script. And these are black inventors who are far more important than the basketball players and baseball players and all that other stuff.
Everybody's important.
And what it is, my cousin signed a contract 75 years ago last week with Branch Rickey to play baseball for the Brooklyn Dodgers. 75 years ago. he signed that contract. February 24th,
What year?
1947.
We're in the Stone
All right?
Age.
Jackie Robinson signed that contract.
48.
And we need to understand that we can do our own thing. Because the Negro Leagues collapsed following that. There were black men that owned baseball stadiums, that owned teams. All their businesses collapsed, chasing the other people. All right? We need to come full circle and understand where we were 100 years ago and where we are today. And in business, we had at least 300% more blacks in business in the early 1900s
Instead of
than we
being
do
dependent
today.
on others.
We need to teach our children about business, entrepreneurship, setting up some type of business. Just like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, do for self.
And what
Take
is
your
the problem?
education and build a
What
business.
is the problem of us doing things together? What is our problem? It's the way we treat each other. That's the biggest problem.
Well, sometimes the way we allow ourselves to be treated, because this is the other thing that is a challenge to us.
I'm talking about how we treat each other.
I know, but I am saying it's equally important, because it's the old story about if someone barges into the room and attacks you, and I just sit there waiting, maybe my turn to be attacked, wait a minute, what's my culpability? Your defense should also be a part of my responsibility, as well as my own self-defense. And that thinking is part of what will take us forward. If we understand that our communities, we share the obligation to protect our young ones. We share the obligation to build our community. It's not just on one person. So that's part of what has to be inculcated into more and more of our young people, because they're being taught the exact opposite in some of the schools. They're being taught to do for self, to go for self, and to hell with everybody else. That's what they're being taught in the schools. We have to teach them that, yes, I am my brother's keeper, and I am responsible for what happens to my brother.
Most of the problems that we get into is the argument about how we react to the white man.
Yeah.
See, but I didn't come here to talk about the white man.
That's a powerful distraction.
But you have to talk about the white man. I mean, we're not talking about just you and your thoughts. You're one individual. And you've been fortunate enough to have taken advantage of the situation that we're in.
See, I didn't come here to talk about Donald Trump. I came here to talk about us.
Everybody should care about Donald Trump. That's wrong, and that's a bad premise
He's
to put
not the
out there.
focus of my existence. I have to
We're
focus.
not talking about just you, Graham.
Brother Farrakhan
We're talking
said
about
at the Million Man
other
March,
people out here that don't
what
have
are
the
you
force.
doing, brother?
Why don't you let me finish and explain?
Okay, I'm sorry for speaking.
Sometimes you need to quiet down and listen to the leader here.
Oh, please. Massa, go ahead, Massa.
In that brief pause, I'll recall the name of Brother Patterson, who was the one that invented that
C.W.
call.
Patterson was
C.R. Patterson.
C.R.
Love
Patterson.
and God, and the only way to salvation
Oh, wait,
is
we're
to
not
love
finished.
your brother.
We're not finished.
wait
C.R.
a minute.
Patterson was
Patterson
the
and Sons
automobile guy.
automobile.
C.R.
Wait a
Patterson.
minute, let me finish this. The God in me loves the God in you. Stay tuned for more. And we got another minute.
C.R. Patterson.
And
Right.
love
He was
will
an automobile
conquer all.
inventor and creator.
Yes.
And he
That's
did
all.
as much
Don't
work
listen
to
to the
make
devil in you.
millionaires. Yeah.
Don't listen to the devil in you. Oh, he's got
That's
you the
right.
wrong
Get thee
way.
behind me, Satan.
Yeah, that's right. You got to talk to yourself sometimes when you get that way. Right,
May I
Leroy?
say this, Dr. Bowles. Dr. Bowles
Oh,
will
boy.
be at Simotap Saturday.
Oh,
Simo
They have
tap.
to call. They have to call
Oh.
Simotap's number. And
Okay.
also, you go to WBAI archives. She was on today on the show called Minefields,
Well,
which
see,
is headed up by
Can
James
we- can you get
McIntosh.
it-
You can hear what we have to say.
can you get her to Skype in next week?
I'm sure she would if you open to it.
Okay. Peace. God bless.
what time Saturday? I'll call you. I'll call you.
Yeah, okay.
That was. But go to Roland.